With us now on the Michigan Megacast is the State Representative Brenda Carter from Michigan's 29th District, representing several communities in southeastern Michigan. Representative Carter, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, Tyler, thank you so very much for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So among many of the issues affecting Michigan are issues, especially at the federal level, particularly the decision in recent months by the U.S. Supreme Court and the decision on Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization that ultimately overturned Roe versus Wade. You joined other Democratic lawmakers at the state capitol in June to protest the effects of Roe versus Wade being overturned in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. Can you speak to how that's impacting Michigan politics also? Because here in Michigan, the law from the 1930s that also would outlaw abortion here in the state of Michigan is still being held. It's not in effect at this moment in time, but that's definitely going to have a continued impact on legislation at the state level going forward.
Well, Tyler, thanks for asking that question, and you're absolutely correct. I'm a very strong advocate against the decision that was made in Washington. As it stands right now, abortion is still legal in the state of Michigan, thanks to the court blocking the enforcement of that 1931 draconian ban. We know the forces that are opposing a woman's right to choose won't stop at abortion. They're coming for contraceptions. They're coming for marriage equality. I would encourage all citizens out there to contact their legislators, not only in Lansing, but in Washington, D.C., and tell them where they stand on reproductive freedoms.
In terms of Michigan's Democratic caucus, it's still in the minority at the state level. As you're going forward in your party and working across the aisle, too, to try to find solutions to many of these issues with your Republican counterparts, where do those discussions currently lie in terms of maybe changing Michigan's code in terms of abortion and putting new laws into place that would then circumvent the 1930s law should it come back into effect?
Well, currently, right now, to my knowledge, there is no collaboration between the two. It's still very much a partisan issue, but that is not stopping advocates out there from trying to get our colleagues to understand that it's more than just taking away a woman's right to her own body. It's about making sure that women are kept safe. What this law has done, overturning Roe v. Wade, has done is made it very difficult for women who are impoverished to seek proper medical care. You know, even in case of rape or incest, they're not able to get the care they need because of this ban. So this overturning the law. So where we're standing right now, I think there's some empathy on the other side of the aisle. There may be some, but it's largely a partisan issue.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter, a state representative from Michigan's 29th District, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. Representative Carter, after a year of work, the Michigan Task Force on Juvenile Justice Reform has met in Lansing and approved a final list of policy recommendations to reform the juvenile justice system in the state of Michigan. Can you give us some insight into the work of the task force and what some of those recommendations are to reform the way that juveniles in the state of Michigan that end up in the criminal justice system one way or the other end up going through that system?
Absolutely. And once again, that's a great question because it was an honor to work under the leadership of Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and legislators, prosecutors, judges, community advocates, families. It was a collaborative effort to take a holistic approach to our current juvenile justice system. I was driven to join this task force simply because of some incidents that's happened right here in Oakland County that came across my desk. The most infamous one is the 15-year-old who was sent to juvenile court because she didn't do her homework. Children's Villages to court. So what we did over this year's period of time is that all of us came together and we looked at issues that needed to be addressed, not only addressed, but reformed. Some of those were making sure that there was increased reimbursement rates for local courts and community-based services. A lot lot of our services that are in the community still need equitable funding, and it depends on where the location is. But it's all across the state. We have these issues with our juveniles. Also, creating another thing we looked at was creating the juvenile indigent defense system, making sure that our most needy had a voice. Data collection we found that it was in silos. We had different parts of the state doing different ways of collecting their data. So what we're looking for is uniformity across the state. Some of the fees that the families were being charged were a little egregious, and what it did was it kept families away from getting the services that they need. So another thing that we looked at was eliminating the fees for families to make it easier for them to participate in the whole entire process. I thought one of the significant things was involving the families, because all too often families don't have a voice. Once their young person is matriculated into the juvenile justice system, it's almost like a school to prison pipeline. So one of the things we thought we would do is create a statewide parent advisory council so they can come in and voice some of the things that they're going through and bring it to the judges and prosecutors and even the lawmakers, so we can come up with a resolve that most best fit that youth. And finally, we looked at, and it's a whole bunch of other ones, but I'm just giving the ones that I thought were really, really significant. This is the one that I focused on the most, which was eliminating the racial disparities. We found that a disproportionate amount of Black youth were in the juvenile justice system for things that may be perceived as egregious behavior, but was actually just the animated behavior of the youth. So we took a look and we actually did the demographics to see where the large pockets of youth were coming from. And we found, yes, they were coming from largely Black communities. So we took a deep dive into that as well and looked at ways that we could divert the youth from going into the system in the first place by providing the necessary resources they need to just deal with some of the situations that they're dealing with. If you look at some of the youth that are in majority, minority, or impoverished, because it's not just Black youth, you have it all over the state, but the common thread seems to be poverty. If you look at those, it's because these youth have a lack of resources in their communities. So we're trying to mitigate some of those as well.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter from Michigan's 29th State Congressional District, joining us on the Michigan Megacast. Representative Carter, somewhat connected to the issue of juvenile delinquency is also the gun violence issue. Of course, that affects kids in so many different ways, and it's affected kids right in your local area of Oakland County just in the past year, of course, with the tragic shooting at Oxford High School. In terms of addressing gun violence, it's another one of those issues that easily turns into a pervasive us against them sort of mentality, with the Democrats wanting to have more gun control effects put in place and the Republicans on the other side wanting to protect gun owners' rights to bear arms. What discussions have been had at the state level, particularly in a bipartisan manner, to address gun violence in the state of Michigan and put more prevention tactics in place that allow our local lawmakers and allow our local law enforcement also to help prevent gun violence in our communities?
Tyler, thank you for this question. This is right in my wheelhouse right here because of the numbers of shootings that's happened, not only in Oxford, but you may be aware of the 7-year-old in Pontiac, my home city, who was just returning from school and unfortunately was gunned down. I think it took something like Uvalde, Texas, to wake everybody up. I know in Lansing, there are some empathetic colleagues on the other side of the aisle that they want to put an end to this gun violence. And I do believe that we're beginning to see a breakdown of those barriers as we continue to impress upon them this is not about taking away their guns. There are a lot of people out there that are responsible, safe gun owners that have a right to have their guns. But this is about taking the guns out of the hands of people who take them and shoot 19 kids and two adults. Or you can't go to a 4th of July parade without somebody feeling they have the right just to take your life. This is why we're trying to do it. And it was very, very, it was, I took a deep breath when I saw what happened in Washington when bipartisan support put legislation in place to curb some of the gun violence that's happening in our nation. You know, we are number one for access of getting AR-14s in our hands. And we must work together as a collaboration and put the partisanship aside and see the real human damage this is doing to our children. We talk about our children. I cannot even imagine when I was going to elementary school to have to go through what those children went through in Texas or Sandy Hook, okay, or Oxford, you know, just going to school on a normal day. And if we put sensible gun reforms in place, you know, red flagging a person when they come in, or making sure you have safe storage, or the bill that I introduced, the one that says limit magazine capacity. Limit the capacity. Don't make it so that you can reload and kill. This is some of the things that I believe that is becoming a human issue with all of us lawmakers. And I do believe in my heart we're going to see some movement on that.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter from Michigan's 29th State Congressional District on the Michigan Megacast. And just for reference, you mentioned AR-15 style guns being used recently in many of these shootings, including in Buffalo at the grocery store that killed 10 people. And of course, at the elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 children were shot dead very recently. Also, AR-15 style guns. There's a great article in the Detroit News today from Lindsay Whitehurst at the Associated Press that these particular guns have brought in over $1 billion in sales in the last 10 years. These are highly marketable guns, and they're being highly marketed, and for a variety of reasons. Not all of these are being used in school shootings, but to address those issues even further, you mentioned having these automatic or semi-automatic weapons, and in this case, one that can fire high capacity rounds fairly quickly, and getting those into the hands of people. What sort of measures can be put in place to limit those styles of guns at the state level? At the federal level, it's one thing, but at the state level, how do you go about addressing specific styles of guns or specific kinds of magazines?
We have tried, Tyler, for this whole entire session. The chair of the Firearms Safety and Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, Senator Rosemary Bear, whose district also includes Oxford, you know, created this bipartisan group of legislators who have introduced almost 60 bills. Mine was not the only one, almost 60 bills where we felt this was sensible gun reform. They have not had any movement in the House, that's for sure. Not sure how much movement they had in the Senate, but one of the things that we're looking at, because I work with Moms Demand Action, I work for Every Town for Gun Safety, and Every Town in Michigan, all of these groups, Pontiac United Crimes, there's so many groups out there now that just want to see a stop to this. And I feel that if the legislature, for partisan reasons, cannot see that these attacks on our citizens, on our residents, not just the children, as you said, it's in our communities. If they can't see that putting sensible gun reforms in place to help protect our citizens is necessary, I feel we may have to go to a ballot initiative.
We're joined by Representative Brenda Carter from Michigan's 29th State Congressional District in Oakland County on the Michigan Megacast. Representative Carter, just a few more minutes with you. I want to talk about you recently, at the end of last year, at the end of 2021, you helped to secure a $200,000 grant for career navigation at Oakland University. Can you talk about helping to secure that grant and how that's going to be used at the university to help students get ready for their careers, and then once they do graduate and they're ready to enter the workforce, hopefully in your local area in Oakland County, or at the very least, staying put right here in Michigan, that they're able to best put their foot forward?
Tyler, we have identified that all of our children in Michigan are not going to be headed to college. We've identified that. And through the work of Carlton Jones of the Talent Development Coalition and Douglas Jones, Pastor Douglas Jones of Welcome Missionary Baptist Church, they created this program where they garner our young people in high school and teach them the soft skills they need to go into not only an apprenticeable trade, but if they want to become a nurse or if they wanted to go into culinary, this bridge to these jobs it was the reason for why I advocated in Lansing for the $200,000. Now, I had no idea that I would be recognized for something that I just feel that is just necessary for all of our young people who are not college bound. But it was really great to see this program in action. And recently, I want to give a huge shout out to Carlton Jones once again, because he's walking the walk and talking the talk. He has another cohort of young people that's coming through this program, and he's getting them ready to just go right into the job market. And that was the reason behind this $200,000 grant in collaboration with Oakland University that does an outstanding job of reaching into our communities and working with our young people who are not college ready. So this was a win-win for not only Oakland University, but the city of Pontiac and surrounding, because we do have young people from Auburn Hills and West Bloomfield and anywhere the young people need this additional little push to start them on the path to being successful in our society, in our job market. And this is why this money was allocated. And if I could take a minute just to give a little shout out, yesterday at Pontiac City Council, I was able to present Kano Phillips of the Clarence E. Phillips Ascend Foundation $500,000. His program is going into our elementary schools and looking for young people and developing their soft skills, actually working with our teachers and our parapros and everybody in the school in elementary, and supplying them with the necessary tools they need to hopefully get them through the whole path. When they graduated from high school, they would be job ready as well. So what this is pretty much is workforce development. It is educational development. It's assisting underserved communities to help these communities bring these bright and brilliant young people right into the market. Because right now I found, and coming from Pontiac School District Board of Education, I found that most children in Michigan who are underserved only need to have a chance. And once we provide them with the resources they need to be competitive, they will not only be competitive, they will excel.
Representative Carter, appreciate you joining us. Thanks for being with us today.
Tyler, thank you so very much for having me.